Okay, first of all, an introduction, boring information, otherwise nothing makes sense. This is a terrible, horrible, boring timetable of the Roman history, of the ancient Roman history. Okay, forget all this information. If you go to the Republic, at the end of the Republic, you will read civil wars. That's the time we're going to cover today, okay? The civil wars. We are at the end of the Republic and at the beginning of the Empire. To make it simple, the Empire is after Christ. The Republic was before Christ. It's like Star Wars. George Lucas was inspired by the Roman Empire, okay? So basically, the Republic became an empire. And I can say that Julius Caesar was like Anakin Skywalker that destroyed the Republic and he helped the empire to rise. We are in the 1st century BC, so it's before Christ. And this is basically a terrible, horrible, boring chronology of the life of Julius Caesar. You don't need to memorize any of this information. It's just for you to know that I did my homeworks. And most important of all, the chronology. Julius Caesar was born in the year 100 BC and he died in the Ides of March, March the 15th, 44 BC. So when he died, he was 56 years old. And now we're going to see what happened and why he died, why he was killed, why Brutus, Cassius, and the other senators decided to kill the most famous man in the ancient world, together with Alexander the Great, probably. Caesar had an obsession for Alexander the Great. This is a map of the Roman Republic at the time of Julius Caesar. You see that it was already covering most of Spain, France, Italy, the Balkanic, Greece, Turkey, and a small section of the Middle East. Obviously, the Roman Empire was going to be much larger, but this is the Republic at the time of Julius Caesar. Caesar gave his incredible contribution to the Republic. The last important boring thing, as you notice, I put all the boring things at the beginning. The assassination of Julius Caesar is one of the best known events in the history of the world because more than 15 ancient Roman writers gave us their point of view about the assassination, their memories. Most of them, no, all of them, nobody of them saw the assassination. Nobody of them was in Rome when Julius Caesar was killed, except for Cicero. But each one of them had his own opinion, and he was able to read his own sources. So basically, we have many different descriptions of the event and with many different perspectives. Okay, Caesar was a god or Caesar was a monster. It's time to start with the story. I go chronologically, move chronologically. We move directly to the Ides of March. We're going to use flashbacks. I want to live the last hours of Caesar's life and what happened after Caesar's death. And I also want you to understand the events. So we use the flashbacks to understand them better. It's March the 15th, 44 BC, the Ides of March. It's 8 o'clock p.m. Brutus, Cassius, and Decimus, the most important organizers of the conspiracy to kill Julius Caesar, are waiting for Caesar to come to meet them. Where? Why? What happened? Okay, this is Rome. This is a map of the city of Rome. All the blue points you see in these Google Earth maps are going to be covered today. So it's a lot of information, it's a lot of monuments, and I really want you to fall in love with the city of Rome. And obviously this is a perfect excuse to show you the beauty of the city. We fly to the city center in an area that's very close to the Pantheon. If you're where in Rome, you know what I mean. The Pantheon is one of the most famous monuments of the world. There is an archaeological area. As you can see, it's dug right in the middle of the city center. Here, the archaeologists demolished an entire block of the city, and they were able to find 4 different temples. You see only the basement and the columns of the temples, but there were 4, number 4, okay? If you look at this reconstruction of the area, you see 1, 2, 3, and 4 temples, okay? And that's exactly what you can see in front of me. You have to use a lot of imagination to remake the maps of Rome, okay? So the 4 temples are here. Why are they important? Because right behind these 4 temples, there was a structure. So today, if you come to Rome, you can see this area. It's going to be open to the visitors in a few weeks. So you will be maybe the first visitors able to go down and visit the area. Right behind the 4 temples, as you notice in this reconstruction, there was a big hall, let me say like a room with an entrance, with columns. It seems like a temple. It was not a temple. We call it Curia Pompeii. It was built by Pompey. Pompey was the greatest friend and worst enemy Julius Caesar had during his life. This is where Julius Caesar was going to be assassinated. And it's very ironic that he was killed in a room, in a hall that was built by his worst enemy, okay? What does it remain today of this building? Nothing. The wall in front of you. This is one of the most terrible things you can find in Rome. This wall is the end wall of a room where the Senate met together during the Ides of March, March the 15th. The only sign, the only information you find on the wall, it's don't feed the cats, because you will find out if you come to Rome that this is the cats colony of the city center. All the cats of the Colosseum were moved to this area. The name of the archaeological area is Largo Argentina, so Argentina Square, and they were moved here, and people come and they give food to the cats. So obviously it's not good for the health of the cats, but can you imagine, this is the room where Julius Caesar was assassinated, and the only information you find is don't feed the cats. That's something I hate in Rome, when we really underrate the importance of the monuments. What you see is a small tree in front of you. There was a marble basement. There was a statue on the basement, the statue of Pompey, the builder of the whole, and right at the feet of the basement, right at the bottom of the statue, Julius Caesar was assassinated. But at this time, Brutus, Cassius, and Decimus are waiting for Julius Caesar. Caesar didn't come yet. If you see the videos freezing, is not because of the connection, it's because I stopped the video to talk, okay? So don't worry. Okay, now it's time to introduce the protagonist of the story. Here you see Brutus in the middle, and down to the right you see Cassius. They were, in practice, they were stepbrothers, okay? Cassius married Brutus' sister, but the most important figure, the most important person is Servilia, is this beautiful woman that you see up to the top. She was Brutus' mother. Servilia, when she was only 16, 17, she had a love relationship with Julius Caesar. Caesar loved Servilia so much for his entire life. Caesar had 3 different wives plus Cleopatra. Doesn't matter. Servilia probably has been the real love of his life. He gave him a gem for the value of 6 million sesterces. That's today like more than $10 million. In any case, Servilia married another man. Julius Caesar married 3 other women, but Servilia remained the love of his life. And at a certain point, the rumors in Rome start saying that Brutus, the son that Servilia had when she was only 17, was not her husband's son, but he was Julius Caesar's son. That's going to be very important for our story, okay? So we cannot prove that Brutus was the son of Julius Caesar. It was just rumors that everybody heard in the city of Rome, but you have to know that Brutus was the natural son of Servilia. Servilia has been one of the most important women in the life of Julius Caesar, and there is a chance, maybe small, maybe big, I don't know, I was not there, I never met them, that Brutus was Caesar's son. But it's very ironic, because probably Caesar was killed by a possible son, okay? That's the story. Brutus, Cassius, okay? Now you know them. Who is the third organizer of the conspiracy? His name is Decimus. Decimus was the right hand of Julius Caesar. Today we're going to learn the name Decimus. We're going to meet him. We're going to understand who he was. Decimus is very important in the conspiracy. Without Decimus, the conspiracy couldn't work, for the simple reason that Julius Caesar trusted Decimus better than his brother and than his father, okay? Decimus was one of the 2 most important collaborators of Julius Caesar, together with Mark Antony. So Decimus moved Caesar toward his assassination. That's why it's so important. He was a general in the army of Julius Caesar. All around the area where Caesar was killed. So if you look at this reconstruction, again, you see the 4 temples, you see the Curia Pompei, so the hall where the Senate met, and then right before it, you see that there was a garden surrounded by a wall, and right before it, there was a temple, the Temple of Pompey. All this structure was built by Pompey. Again, Pompey has been the best collaborator and then the worst enemy Julius Caesar had in his life. The relationship changed a lot at a certain point. If you love HBO made an entire TV show about the relationship between Caesar and Pompey. The TV show is Rome. It's a very well done. Okay, it's a fiction, obviously, but it's well done. Now, to understand the city of Rome, look at this picture. This is a Rome seen from Google Earth. You see that there is a strange round wall here. It's a modern block, okay, made of modern buildings, but ancient Rome is buried underground, and this line of buildings perfectly follows the line of the buildings of the Pompey theater. What I mean is that, okay, look at this reconstruction of the theater up to the right, and look at the Google Earth the reconstruction on the left side, and it's absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable, because you see that the city still shows you the secrets of Rome. You can still see the remains of the theater of Pompey hidden underneath the modern buildings, because they follow the same outline. So it's incredible for me as an archaeologist that Rome, in Rome, you just look at Google Earth, you can understand where the buildings are buried underground because of the modern buildings. This is just a a way to show you. So just to make a summary, Brutus, Cassius, Decimus, they're waiting for Julius Caesar to join them. It's March the 15th. It's 8 a.m. There was a Senate meeting. Caesar was supposed to be the chief of the Senate. At that time, he was a dictator, and he was going to destroy the Republic. And the senators knew that Caesar wanted to destroy the Republic and the Senate power, so they decided to eliminate Julius Caesar. The problem is that 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, Caesar didn't show up. Now imagine how nervous Brutus and Cassius were. They organized the most important conspiracy in the history of the world and the most important assassination, and the victim is not coming. And they didn't know what happened. Caesar was supposed to be there 2 hours before, and he didn't go, okay? In practice, the reason why we're extremely, ignore these slides for the moment, the reason why they were very lucky is because Decimus was part of the conspiracy. If you have the right hand of Julius Caesar working against Julius Caesar and working for you, organizing the killing of Caesar, obviously everything is going to be easier. At a certain point, they told Decimus, hey, why don't you go to Caesar's house? Why don't you meet him? And you ask him what happened. Try to convince him to come because everything is set. We have to kill him today. This is a complicated slide that shows you the family tree of Julius Caesar, okay? So you see Julius Caesar in the middle, down to the picture of Caesar, you see Calpurnia, Pompeia, and Cornelia, the 3 wives Julius Caesar had. We also added Cleopatra. Cleopatra married Caesar, but in Egypt, so the Romans never recognized that wedding officially, okay? And in practice, you notice that Caesar also had a sister, Julia Minor. Julia Minor was had a daughter, Atia, and Antia had a son, Octavian Augustus. Okay, so this is just a way for me to introduce you the family, but now we're moving to through the story, and you're going to know some of these protagonists much better. Okay, so remember, it's 10 o'clock a.m. Caesar was supposed to show up 2 hours earlier. He didn't, so Decimus goes to the house of Julius Caesar to check what happened. Today, the itinerary is still the same itinerary Decimus followed at that time. Obviously, we cannot walk through the ancient city, but we can walk through the modern city to reach the Roman Forum where Julius Caesar was living. His house was there. We can meet one of the most beautiful monuments of Rome, this white gigantic memorial that we call wedding cake. Okay, it's very modern. It was built 100 years ago, and we entered the area of the Forum. It's time for us to walk through the Forum. First of all, the entrance, the access to the Forum is the Vicus Argentarius. What does it mean? The street of the bankers. This street is originally is 2,000 years old. The cobblestones on the streets are 2,000 years old. These concrete wall on the right side are 2,000 years old. The Romans invented concrete and red fire bricks, and these walls are almost entirely made of concrete and red fire bricks. This is an ancient stair that goes down to the Forum, and now you're going to see many more spaces, many more slots. Each one of them was a banker office. Okay, imagine people that were here changing money, giving you letter of credits, and there was also water fountain at a certain point. This one, obviously, I told you need an imagination to imagine that this water fountain was covered with marble and the water was springing out down to the basin in the bottom. Okay, Decimus is walking there. Decimus is very nervous. He has to meet his boss, and with a different feeling than usual, because he knows that the organizer is killing, and now Julius Caesar is there and in his house, and he doesn't know why he didn't show up. This is a view of the Roman Forum. The most interesting things you see in this view are these cube here made of concrete. We're going to talk about it later. And this marble arch. It's a triumph arch of the ancient empire. It was built many years after Caesar. So imagine that it was not there at that time. It doesn't matter. I couldn't cancel the monuments that were not there at the time of Caesar. The Roman Empire lasted 500 years. Together with the Republic is 1,000 years. So obviously, and this is where Julius Caesar was living. It's right at the border of the Roman Empire, of the Roman Forum. This is the house of the Vestal Virgins, one of the most important houses of ancient Rome, and I'm going to tell you what Vestal Virgins means today. The house of Caesar was here, Domus Publica. It was a beautiful villa, but it was not gigantic. Caesar chose to live in front of the Forum. There was not a big space over there. So it's the luxury of the villa and the position of the villa in front of the Forum that made Caesar house so incredibly important. This is a view of the Roman Forum as it is today. You see the beauty of the remains. There is a a marketplace in front of you, and then this strange building with a central window on the side. This is the Roman Senate. Today you're going to find out that the Senate of ancient Rome is still perfectly standing. And then you see the arch I mentioned before, and then the square of the Forum. The Forum is nothing more than the square you have in front of you. It was a meeting place. It was a social network. This is where every day hundreds of thousands of people met together to live their life, to buy food, to buy clothes, to sell something, to vote, to listen to the senator speeches, to attend the funerals, to see gladiators fighting before they build the Colosseum, to see slaves in the market on sale. So in practice, the Forum was the place where everything happened, okay? And then we move to the left, you see the beauty of these trees, the remains of this temple. Okay, if you want to know everything in detail about the Roman Forum, I also do a virtual tour, a virtual walking tour through the Roman Forum. Today, I have no time to explain you every single monument of the Forum, but I do it in that specific tour. Now, let's go back to Decimus and imagine this poor guy walking through this marble area. Today, the Forum is ruins. By that time, it was marble. And Decimus start thinking of the war in Gallia. Gallia is modern France. Caesar, together with his two helpers, Decimus and Mark Antony, in 7 years was able to conquer France, Switzerland, Belgium, Netherlands, and he also tried to invade England, and it was partly successful. So Julius Caesar was a genius, a military genius. The problem is that during the 7 years, he was able to kill more than 700,000 people. So Caesar was the Hitler of the ancient times, okay? He was able to kill almost 1 million people in 7 years, civils, women, old persons, children, just because he needed to fight and conquer as quick as possible. Mark Antony and Decimus were two of the protagonists of this incredible conquest. There were two other military geniuses, and they strongly helped Caesar in the most important battles to conquer France, in particular the Battle of Alesia. That's the historians consider the moment when Caesar really was able to win his war in France, when the king of France, Vercingetorix, was arrested. And if you know the comic books Asterix and Obelix, obviously that's the time, okay? It's Julius Caesar fighting the Gauls in Gallia. In any case, the conquest of Julius Caesar, the conquest of Gallia, of France, made Julius Caesar the most powerful man of the Republic, and the Senate understood that it was time to stop Julius Caesar power. Imagine the conflict. We have a Senate in Rome. We are in 49 BC. The Senate was made of the patricians. The Senate was made of the wealthiest families of Rome, the noblemen, okay? And it's 500 years that these families shared the power. And Julius Caesar was one of them. He came from the family Julia. Julius Caesar, Julia, was one of the most ancient and important families of the Senate. And this guy was fighting in France, and the senators understood that he was committing all the possible horrible sins a man can commit. And most important of all, he didn't obey the orders of the Senate. So they called Caesar back to Rome. He was going to be put on trial in order to be judged for all the horrible crimes he committed. Caesar understood that was just an excuse. So there was only a way to do. There was only a thing to do. He had to reach Rome together with his legions. If you enter the city of Rome alone by himself, that was going to be the end. But if you enter the city of Rome with his legions, his loyal legions, nothing was going to happen to him. So together with the 10th legion, that was the most loyal one, Caesar crossed the Rubicon. As you notice in this map, the Rubicon was a small river north of Rome. And in practice, according to the ancient laws, if you cross the Rubicon with the army, it was the same of declaring war to Rome. So Caesar arrived in Rome with his army. He was able to defeat the senators. Most of the senators escaped. His worst enemy, Pompey, he was there, and he was convincing the senators that Caesar was the enemy. Caesar was the evil, and he has to be cancelled from the face of the earth. Escaped as well. So the senators and Pompey escaped. So do you understand the problem? Pompey has been one of the main collaborators. He collaborated with Caesar. They made an agreement that we call triumvirate. And for many years, Caesar and Pompey were working together. But at a certain point, when the power of Caesar became too big, Pompey convinced the Senate that Caesar was the evil and he had to be stopped. So he started manipulating the Senate. But when he realized that Caesar was so foolish to enter the city of Rome with the army, he decided to escape, okay? And he left Italy with the senators and his legions, and he moved to Spain. That's the beginning of the Civil War, Caesar versus Pompey. Now, you see, Imagine this is Decimus walking, okay? Decimus just entered the Roman Forum. Obviously, this is me walking a few months ago, but you have to imagine that basically this is the same itinerary Decimus have to follow if you wanted to get to the house of Julius Caesar. He was going to turn left on these ancient Roman roads. Look at the beauty of these roads. It's still the original one. It's an incredible shape. Remember that the Forum has been buried underground for many hundreds of years. So the excavations were able to unveil the beauty of the ruins, but in some way they preserved the ruins. On the right side, we have the Supreme Court of Justice that was built by Julius Caesar himself. We're going to talk about it later. There is a girl chatting, obviously. And then, so just to give you an idea, imagine the atmosphere. There are thousands of people. They totally ignore what is going to happen. For these people, if Caesar was the boss or not, absolutely didn't make any difference. And now Decimus was going to get the Domus Publica, the house of Julius Caesar, that today is nothing. I mean, the remains of the house of Julius Caesar today are only the blocks you see in front of you. You see that there is like a modern roof here in front of in the middle of this picture. This roof is covering an archaeological excavation. I work in this archaeological excavation in the year 2001, 2, and 3. It was very exciting because we were working in the Domus Publica, the house where Julius Caesar was living the last day of his life. Caesar was there, okay? It was today, obviously, it's just ruins, but imagine the magnificence of an incredible, ancient, wealthy villa, the villa of the most important man in the world. It was going to be absolutely fantastic. Now I'm going to show you a few reconstruction to make you understanding what I mean. This is the inside of a villa. Okay, these reconstructions have been taken from Pompeii, but basically it's exactly how the house of a senator in Rome was going to look like. You see the mosaics, you see everything. Caesar was in the villa. What happened? He met Decimus. Decimus asked him, Caesar, what's up? What happened? The senators are waiting for you since more than 2 hours, so you didn't show up. You know, Decimus, I don't think that I'm going to leave my house today because me and my wife, we had 2 bad dreams last night. I dreamt of myself flying above the city of Rome, hand by hand with Jupiter, and my wife dreamt of me bleeding in her hands. So when we woke up and we had breakfast together, I decided that I was not going to leave Rome, my house today, even because, do you remember Spurinna? And Decimus wonder, who is Spurinna? I don't remember his name. Spurinna was a priest. A month before the assassination of Caesar, Spurinna told Caesar during a ritual, beware of the Ides of March. Caesar looked at Spurinna and say, what? Beware of the Ides of March. So Julius Caesar, usually he was quite superstitious, okay? And if a priest tells you to be aware of a specific day, you take it into consideration, okay? So probably Spurinna, that's the interpretation of the historians. Spurinna knew that Brutus and Cassius were working on the killing of Julius Caesar, and he wanted to make him aware of the conspiracy. But Caesar, at a certain point, didn't pay attention. In any case, imagine Decimus working on Caesar psychology. Hey, you are Julius Caesar. You are a god. You are a dictator. You cannot believe in bad omens. This is not the Caesar I know. You have to follow me. The senators are waiting for you, and blah, 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 blah. At the end, working on Caesar pride, he was able to convince him to follow him to the Curia Pompeii, where the senators were waiting for him. And Caesar left his house hand by hand with Decimus. Beside the house of Caesar, we had a temple. It was one of the most important temples of ancient Rome, the Temple of Vesta, okay? It's this small, round marble building that you see on the left side, okay? I told you if you want to know everything about the other buildings in this video, just follow my virtual tour about the Roman Forum. You see this is a small, round temple, okay? What's the reason why this temple was extremely important? Because it was the temple of the fire, okay? In practice, imagine that in Rome there was a superstition. That for us is a superstition, for the Romans it was religion. This fire burning in the temple of Vesta. If you look up to the left, you see the picture of the temple. Imagine there was a fire burning inside the temple. The legend said that if the fire burns, the city of Rome is safe. If the fire burned out, the city of Rome was going to be destroyed, okay? So basically, the Romans believed that the fire had to burn. night and day. Otherwise, it was the end of Rome. And they chose 6 girls to do it. We call them Vestal Virgins. The Vestal Virgins were living in the house of the Vestal Virgins, beside the house of Caesar, beside the temple, and they were just fueling the fire night and day. So it was a very simple duty they have, just to make the fire burning. Inside the temple of the Vestal Virgin, there was a cabinet where the most important members of the Roman society were putting papyri, Egyptian papyri, where they wrote their testament, their will. So 6 months before he died, Julius Caesar wrote his will and he put it in the temple of the Vestal Virgins. I usually find crazy that you put your testament close to a fire. It doesn't make a big sense to me, but that was the tradition in any case. So this is just for you to know that Decimus and Caesar walk right in front of the Vestal Virgins house and temple, and they saw where Julius Caesar testament was put. Okay, and now we're going to reach them back to the Senate building. It was not the Senate building. Okay, it's a little bit confusing now. Let me tell you something. I showed you the Senate before, okay, in the middle of the Roman Forum. But I also told you that the senators on that day met together in the Curia Pompeii. That was a totally different building. If you read Shakespeare said the killing of Julius Caesar on the steps of the Senate, but that's a mistake. So what's the reason why the senators didn't meet Caesar in the Senate building, but they meet Caesar in this other building that I showed you before? Because the Senate building was destroyed by a fire, and Julius Caesar restored the building. So basically, it was under construction when Caesar died, and it couldn't be used by the senators to meet together. Otherwise, if it was ready, for sure, Julius Caesar was going to be assassinated over there. Right behind the Roman Forum, we had this red area. The red area is named Suburra. It was the district where Julius Caesar was born. You see the Colosseum on the right side. It was one of the most famous districts of Rome because it was poor, violent, dirty. This is where the plebs were living, okay? And it's crazy that Julius Caesar, that came from a noble family, had a villa in the middle of the Suburra. But that helped him in his political career because he looked like being the defender of the population, the defender of the poor. The Suburra was so important in the Roman mentality that today, when in English you say suburbs, you still mean the Suburra, okay? Usually the suburbs in a city are the periphery, the dirty, dangerous, poor periphery. Basically, it comes from the idea of the Suburra. Caesar was living over there, and then he moved his house to the Roman Forum at a certain point, just to this is the wall dividing the Forum from the Suburra. These are reconstructions of the Suburra, just to increase his status and his visibility. Imagine, okay, it's very nice of you living in the Suburra when basically you are a young politician and you need people's support. But once you become a dictator, once you become the most important man in the world, living together with the poor is not a great marketing, a great advertising for you. Now, imagine this is the most important and dangerous and boring and complicated slide of this entire session, but you really need to focus on it for a few seconds. Otherwise, you cannot understand Caesar. To understand the importance of Julius Caesar, why Caesar was killed, you have to understand how the Roman Republic politics was working. It's very simple. You see a red block, that's the Senate. So in Rome, the Senate made the most important decision. The Senate declared war. The Senate approved new taxes, okay? The senators were wealthy people. They were landowners. They came from the patrician class. And obviously, they were well-educated. So for the common population, it was good to have these well-educated people that made a real decision. But they wanted to participate to the power. So in blue, surrounded by a blue line, you see the public assemblies, okay? The Romans used to call comitia. These comitia basically were made to approve the decision of the Senate. So the Senate made the decision, but the comitia, so the public assemblies, have to approve the decision of the Senate. That made the political power in Rome to be divided between the two classes, the Senate on the one hand, so the patricians, and people on the other hand, so the comitia. That's why the logo of Rome was SPQR. That literally means Senate and people of Rome. So the two political decisional power. And then we have the magistrates that here in this case you see in a green, with a green line. The magistrates could come from both the classes, from the Senate or from the assemblies, so from the patricians or from the plebeians. But the most important thing is that the magistrates were elected for 1 year and they have to be elected by people assemblies. Okay, so every year people decided who were going to be the magistrate, so basically the ministers, for the next year, only 1 year, and then they have to change. You can imagine the corruption. People were voting according to the money they received from the different candidates. Candidates were spending a lot of money to run for the different magistrates, because obviously they wanted to be elected. Caesar had to pass through all this entire system. He spent the first 40 years of his life to become consul, so to become the top magistrate in Rome. And he had to corrupt a lot of people. He spent a lot of money, and he was very frustrated because he was tired of this system made of corruption. In order to increase his visibility, in order to be elected, the magistrate had to spend a lot of money. For example, to organize shows, entertainment. In the middle of the Roman Forum, Caesar built a stadium like the small one you see for only 2,000 or 3,000 people. This is where the first gladiator fights were made in Rome. It's 150 years before the Colosseum, okay? So nothing to do with the Colosseum. They were fighting in the Forum in a very small area. Caesar paid 200 couples of gladiators with his own money. And then what did he add? What did he do? He organized chariot races in the Circus Maximus. If you watch the movie Ben-Hur, you know what I mean. The Circus Maximus was the stadium where the chariots were running 7 times around the central spine in order to get the victory. People loved them. Imagine that during the empire, the Circus Maximus, the stadium for the chariot races, arrived to be a stadium with 300,000 seats. 300,000. So do you understand what I'm meaning? I mean, in the Julius Caesar now, at the end of his life, he was a dictator. He was almost a king, and he was living in the Forum. But he had a long life and a long career, and he had to pass through all these magistrates. And every time he had to spend a lot of money in order to buy people's support, in order to be re-elected and re-elected again and have a great career. He was organizing gladiator fights, chariot races. That was frustrating because he was a great man, and he was tired of paying attention to these small details. When he was very close to win the war and become a king in the city of Rome, the senators were able to kill him. So the senators killed him to preserve the system I just showed you in the last 5 minutes. They didn't want to disappear. They didn't want to lose their power. And when they understood that Caesar was very close to his victory, they decided to eliminate Julius Caesar. It's 12 p.m., March the 15th, 44 BC. Caesar entered the Curia Pompeii together with Decimus, okay? And now we're flying back to where Brutus and Cassius were waiting for them in the small room named Curia Pompeii, where Julius Caesar assassination was going to happen. Once again, I show you this wall, and it's always crazy for me to think that Caesar was killed in this very room, and now nothing is indicated. You notice that there was a garden before the Curia Pompeii. The garden is important because one of the conspirators, how many senators did they exist at the time? Caesar increased the number of the senators to 900, okay? So in theory, there were many senators, but they didn't show up. It's like our deputies today. How many senators usually show up in a Senate meeting? No more than 200. Today, in the Ides of March, of these 260 were conspirators, okay? 60 of them. And only 25 of them had a knife underneath the toga. The toga was the heavy cloth that the senators were using during the meetings. It was heavy enough to hide a knife. So Brutus, Cassius, Decimus, and 22 other senators were waiting for Caesar with a knife. The problem was Mark Antony, because Mark Antony obviously was participating to the meeting. He was not participating to the conspiracy, and he was going to defend Julius Caesar in some way. He was a strong guy. He was tall. He was a great fighter. So one of the conspirators, he told Mark Antony, "Hey, Mark Antony, I have to tell you something." And he took him outside in the garden, okay? While Mark Antony was in the garden, Julius Caesar entered the Curia, and the 25 senators came close to him, and Caesar showed him his hand. That he was thinking, okay, they're coming to celebrate me, to pay me tribute, and then they took the knives. The problem was the chaos that came soon after. Caesar was a soldier. Caesar spent many, many years in the army. He knew how to defend himself. The only thing he had was the toga, that was an heavy cloth, and he put it on his face to protect his organs, okay? On the other hand, the conspirators didn't have a sword. They only had a small knife, and it was not easy to kill a person moving in front of you when you have just a knife and you are 25, and each one of them wanted to give his contribution to the killing. So imagine the chaos of these people moving against Caesar, and Caesar was moving. We know that Brutus had his hand wounded by the knife of a senator that was behind him. This guy tried to reach Julius Caesar, and instead he wounded Brutus' hand, okay? Caesar died 25 knives wounded his body. The doctors who visited the body of Caesar soon after the assassination say that only one of them was mortal. The other 24 failed. One of these knives broke his heart. Caesar died. His slaves, they were over there with him. They took his body back home to wash the body and prepare the body for the funeral. In the meantime, Brutus and Cassius and the conspirators were moving through the streets of Rome, announcing people that Caesar died, that the dictator died. And they were thinking people will love us because people love the Republic. People want the Republic to survive. People want to vote and want to maintain their power. So when they will know that we killed Julius Caesar, the dictator, they're going to follow us and they're going to be happy. One person was not very happy at the time. Her name was Cleopatra, Queen Cleopatra. She was in Rome in that time, exactly in that moment. She was in Rome. She was living in the villa of Julius Caesar behind Trastevere. If you've been in Rome, you know Trastevere. This is where you had the best pizza while you were in the city. Behind Trastevere, there was a villa on a hilltop, the villa of Caesar, obviously. Orticius Ariani, that's the name of the villa. And Cleopatra was there. She was a guest, Caesar guest. She came from Egypt directly to Rome in order to stay together with Julius Caesar. This is a modern villa. This is where basically the modern architects put trees and flowers. But if you destroy the villa, you go underground, you will find the remains of the villa of Julius Caesar. I love this villa because this is where I kissed my first girlfriend when I was 14 years old. So for me, it's full of lovely memory. Not for Cleopatra, probably. The question is, why was Cleopatra in Rome? What's the importance of Cleopatra in this story? The importance is very simple. We have to go back to the previous story. You remember that we have Caesar on the one hand and Pompey on the other hand. I told you that Pompey and Caesar were the best friends. They made a triumvirate, so an agreement to control the Roman Republic, but soon after they fought. You remember that when Caesar invaded Rome, crossing the Rubicon, Pompey, that moved the Senate against him, escaped. He moved to Spain, he reorganized his army, and finally he met Julius Caesar in Greece. There was a battle, one of the most important battles of the ancient world, the Battle of Pharsalus. On the one hand, we have the army of Caesar with his two main collaborators, Mark Antony and Decimus. On the other hand, we have Pompey with his two main collaborators, Brutus and Cassius. This is very ironic. Pompey was defeated, Brutus and Cassius were defeated. In theory, Caesar was supposed to kill Brutus and Cassius. Pompey was able to escape, but Brutus and Cassius remained there, and they were arrested. And Caesar met them in his tent in the military camp. Oh, in particular, he met Brutus, okay? And Brutus was sure, okay, he's going to order my killing. I will ask him to kill myself. I want to kill myself. I want to save my honor. Caesar forgave him. When Caesar met Brutus, he told him, don't worry, I don't want to kill you. You are a very smart guy. I want you to work for me. I want you to be part of my entourage. So Caesar, he didn't only forgive Brutus, but he also gave him a second chance. And he started choosing Brutus for very important political position. So many historians were wondering why. What's the reason why Caesar was so good with Brutus? Usually Caesar was not that gentle with his enemy. And one of the answers is that he met Servilia, the mother of Brutus, before he left to fight this war, before he left Rome to fight this war. And Servilia probably told him, hey, in case you win the war, take care of Brutus, because remember, it can be your son. Obviously, probably even Servilia didn't know if there wasn't any DNA test at that time, but maybe it was a way for a mother to save the life of her son. In any case, this is the most important decision Caesar ever took, because saving the life of Brutus, he saved the life of his killer. So that's when Brutus was able to survive and organize the killing of Caesar. But now Caesar was looking at another priority. Pompey was still alive. His enemy number one, public enemy number one, was still alive. And now he has to go there. You see the picture of Servilia here. He has to find him and kill him. He knew that Pompey escaped to Egypt. Now, it's too long to explain you why Pompey escaped to Egypt. The only thing you have to know, at that time, Egypt was living a civil war between Queen Cleopatra and the pharaoh Ptolemy, Cleopatra's brother. In practice, when their father died, he divided the reign in two halves, and he gave him the reign to his daughter and his son. And they had the same power. They were equal, okay? So at a certain point, they start fighting. When Pompey arrived in Egypt, he thought that he was going to meet friends, because I told you it's a long story, but Pompey saved the father of Cleopatra at a certain point. So they gave him something. They owed him something. As soon as he arrived at the dock of Alexandria, Ptolemy, the brother of Cleopatra, sent him soldiers in theory to receive him. In practice, they arrested Pompey and they cut his head over there in front of his children. Imagine one of the most powerful men in the history of the world that was beheaded by Cleopatra's brother over there on the dock. Why did he do it? He did it because he knew that Caesar was going to win the civil war in Rome, and he wanted him to be a friend of Egypt. So he said, okay, I will kill his worst enemy. He's going to thank me. No, Caesar arrived to Alexandria, and when he knew that Pompey has been beheaded on the dock in front of his children, he went crazy. He said, hey, he was a Roman citizen. You don't touch a Roman citizen because this is Rome. So he used propaganda, okay? Caesar became the defender of Pompey's memory. And obviously, if he had to make a decision between Cleopatra and her brother, he chose Cleopatra. So he supported Cleopatra in the civil war. He killed Ptolemy, and he put Cleopatra again on the throne of Egypt in Alexandria. And now it's when Caesar and Cleopatra had an amazing cruise on the Nile. For 6 months, they traveled through Egypt. Caesar found Cleopatra extremely fascinating. She was an amazing woman. She spoke like 7 languages, and she was probably not very handsome, but it doesn't matter. She was incredibly educated, and she was very mysterious, Egypt at that time. And okay, 6 months later, they came back and Cleopatra was pregnant, okay? She gave to Caesar a son that she named Ptolemy Caesarion. All the pharaohs of that time are named Ptolemy, so it's very boring and it's very confusing. In any case, just for you to know, the only biological son Caesar had, and we know him for sure, was Caesarion. That was the son of Caesar and Cleopatra. Now, Cleopatra had a dream. She wanted to unify Rome and Egypt. She wanted the power of Caesar and the blood of Cleopatra to be mixed together to make like a super gigantic king. That was going to be obviously her son, Caesarion. Caesarion was the son of Rome and the son of Egypt. The problem is that she married Caesar in Egypt, but in Rome, that was not that didn't have any value. So she wanted the Senate of Rome to confirm her marriage with Caesar, to confirm her as a Caesar wife, and to confirm Caesarion as the legal Caesar successor, okay? That's why she was in Rome in that moment. She came to Rome, she started corrupting the senators, spending a lot of money, a lot of gold, okay? Nothing. It didn't work because Caesar died and she had to escape. Mark Antony helped Cleopatra to escape, okay? Now Caesar had only a problem. He have to eliminate the 2 sons of Pompey, the 2 sons that they saw. They saw their fathers being beheaded on the dock of the harbor of Alexandria in front of their eyes. Caesar had to fight them and finally was able to defeat them. And then he came back to Rome for the most important event a general could have after a victory, the triumph. The military triumphs were very common in Rome. This is a picture of a triumph. It was a parade, a military parade. They built arches after the triumph in order to celebrate those victories together. So the military triumphs were basically a memorial events to commemorate a big victory, and the military arches in Rome were memorials to commemorate that victory forever. Imagine that at the end of the Roman Empire, we had like 35 different military marble arches, so something crazy. Let me say that Caesar was not very welcome this time. He made, in practice, a triumph. And the problem is that one of the triumphs was because it defeated Pompey. Pompey had a very good reputation in Rome. He was Roman. And I mean, it was not a great idea because all the supporters of Pompey, all those people that like Pompey, found very strange the celebration of the death of one of them, of a Roman. Fortunately, Caesar solved the problem. He paid each Roman citizen the same of today, basically 20,000 euros, okay? So it gave them donation. Each Roman citizen, 200,000 people, got each one of them 20,000 euros, the same of 20,000 euros today. The Romans use denarii and sesterci. After the triumph. So obviously people say, okay, who cares if Pompey died? This man made me not rich, but for sure he helped me a lot. It was a lot of money, okay? And okay, this is the Triumph Road. Usually you followed, okay? You started from the Circus Maximus, you moved to the Triumph Road in front of you to get the Arch of Constantine. This is one of the 3 arches that still stands in the city of Rome. The other 32 arches have been destroyed, and then you turn left to get the Arch of Titus. So you can follow the itinerary of the arch today if you come to Rome. And then finally, you get the city center where you see the third arch in front of you in the Roman Forum. Remember, no one of these three arches that today still stand in the city were standing at the time of Julius Caesar, but it doesn't matter. Rome was built in a day. So today I can show you Rome as a wall, okay? I cannot show you Rome divided period by period. And the triumph usually ended over the most important hill of Rome, the Capitol Hill. The Capitol Hill was where the temple of Jupiter, the main god of the Roman religion, was. And right in front of the temple of Jupiter, the senators were going to do sacrifices for Jupiter to thank the big god for the victories, okay? So it was a great event. Caesar obviously was able to buy people love. He also organized naval battles in a new stadium he built in Trastevere. Most of the district of Trastevere was used by the architects of Caesar to build a gigantic artificial lake to fight the naval battles. It was still in use at the time of the Colosseum. This is why I don't believe that the Colosseum has never been flooded to fight naval battles. Now, to understand better the reason why Caesar was killed, it's time to focus on Caesar reforms, something that he changed in the Republic in the 6 months before he died, okay? Very quickly, I will tell you what Caesar changed. Remember, Caesar came back from Egypt on October 45 BC, so basically 6 months before he died. Caesar came back from Egypt and he realized that Rome was wrong. Rome, first of all, at that time looked like a village if compared to Alexandria of Egypt, where Cleopatra was living. Second, Cleopatra was a goddess and Cleopatra was a queen. She made all the decisions. She was a pharaoh. In Rome, Caesar was still a consul, and he had to respect all the magistrates and all the votation. He was tired, really tired, okay? So he started changing things. The first thing he changed was the, you see the Roman Forum. Now I'm going to show you some of the pictures Caesar, one of the buildings Caesar rebuilt in order to make Rome like a new Alexandria. First of all, the Basilica Julia. That basically was nothing more than the big court of justice of the Roman Empire. And then a new forum, the Forum of Caesar. It's the narrow square you see right in front of you with the temple at the end. Obviously, I'm going to show you reconstruction, otherwise you don't understand anything. And this is the temple of Venus. Every politician chose a god or a goddess. And then, obviously, we have the Senate. I told you that the Senate of Rome couldn't be used by Brutus and Cassius to kill Julius Caesar because it was under construction when Caesar was killed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the most incredible building of Rome. This is the Senate of Rome, built by Julius Caesar in 45 BC. You see the entrance door, you see the 3 windows for the light coming in, you see the upper part with the remains of the stucco decoration of the facade. It's entirely made of bricks and concrete. Inside it could contain from 300 to 900 senators. It was absolutely unbelievable. You see the marble cover. It was an amazing building. The reason why the Senate survived in such a perfect condition is because they became a church, okay? So becoming a church, the Christians took care of the building. Second important reform Caesar made in Rome when he came back from Egypt. In Egypt, he found out that the Egyptians were using the solar calendar, while in Rome, they were using the moon calendar. There was not very precise. So Caesar introduced the solar calendar, 365 days a year, plus the leap year every 4 years. And we called it Julian calendar because it was made by Julius Caesar. Basically, it's the same calendar we use today. Today we call it Gregorian, just because there was a small reform made by Pope Gregory in the 1500s, but basically still the same calendar Julius Caesar made. He left his testament in the house of Vesta, or in the temple of Vesta. Do you remember? The testament of Julius Caesar was extremely complicated. Caesar didn't want to choose only one heir. He wanted to be sure that the person he chose was going to stay alive the day he died, okay? So the first degree heir was Octavian Augustus. Who was he? If you look at the left side of the family tree, you see that Caesar had a sister, Julia. Julia had a daughter, Atia. Atia had 2 children, Octavian Augustus and Octavia, Augustus' sister. So Caesar chose Octavian simply because he was his step-nephew. He was 19 years old at the day Caesar died, but it didn't matter, okay? He chose him. And he also chose Decimus and Mark Antony, but they were second-degree heirs. What does it mean? In case Octavian died, Decimus and Mark Antony were going to be heirs of Julius Caesar. So he chose Decimus. He chose one of the killers, okay? That's absolutely incredible. Caesar didn't understand what Decimus was doing. And the Basilica Julia was the court of justice that Caesar wanted to stand in the middle of the Roman Forum. This is the beautiful court of justice. This is me walking along the wall of the Basilica Julia. It's unbelievable. If you want to see the inside, if you want to understand more the function of the Court of Justice, follow my virtual tour about the Roman Forum. That's extremely important if you want to know everything about this area. And so Caesar really tried to make Rome as beautiful as the Alexandria is so over there. Okay. And then finally we had the remaking of a small forum, the Forum of Julius Caesar. What does it mean? It was a big monumental square where Julius Caesar was celebrated. Okay, this is a reconstruction of the Forum of Caesar. There was a gilded bronze statue of Caesar riding a horse in the middle, and then there was a temple at the end, the Temple of Venus. What is very special? Inside the Temple of Venus, there was obviously a statue of Venus, the goddess, and there was also a statue of Cleopatra. We don't have the original statue because she was made of gold, but we have a marble copy of it. So this is a statue here, up to the left. This is Venus, you could find in the temple. This is Cleopatra. So we have a copy of Cleopatra's picture that you could find in the temple. It's very anomalous for the Romans because in the Roman religion, you could become a god just after you died. Caesar became a god, but just after he died. While in Egypt, for example, you could be a living god if you were, for example, a pharaoh. So obviously, it was strange for the Romans to see a living person represented as a goddess in one of the temples. But imagine how big the love Caesar had for Cleopatra. Okay, so basically, what happened? We arrived to the end of the story. Caesar obtained from the Senate at the very end, about a month before he died, after all these reforms, he obtained from the Senate three important things. First of all, Caesar was declared, nominated by the Senate, living god. So he was a god alive, but he was alive. Okay, that was the first time in the history of Rome that a man was made a living god with the clergy, with the temple. Second, he was nominated by the Senate lifelong dictator. Okay, what does it mean? King, basically. If you are a dictator for your entire life, not just temporarily, obviously you're a king. And finally, he was nominated inviolable. That was very important because becoming officially inviolable, because he was divine, Caesar totally lost his touch with the reality. And what did he do? He fired his bodyguards. The German bodyguards, they were following Caesar everywhere, were fired. And that's why Caesar was able, why the conspirators were able to kill Caesar so easily on that day. Okay, it's time to move. It's March the 15th. In that afternoon, the conspirators climbed the Capitol Hill, that was basically one of the safest places in Rome, and they start talking to the crowd. When I say talking to the crowd, you have to imagine like Twitter today, okay? Today, our politicians, to write comments about the political events, they tweet. At that time, the politicians have to talk to the crowd. They were standing in the Roman Forum. This is a view of the Roman Forum from the Capitol Hill. So remember Brutus and Cassius standing on the hill and then walking down just to meet these people standing on the political tribune. There was like a balcony in the middle of the forum where they could be heard from many people. It was not a very successful speech. When Brutus spoke, people were claiming him, but when Cassius spoke, people start throwing against him whatever they had. This is a reconstruction of the rostra. Okay, the rostra was the political balcony where the politicians usually talk. Caesar used it many times to talk to the crowd, and now it was time for Brutus and Cassius to use them. Give me just a second, and I'm going to show you better how the rostra looked like. Just a moment. Okay. We'll show you later. What happened to Mark Antony? Mark Antony survived. He was not killed. And he met the so-called Caesarians, basically were the other supporters of Julius Caesar in his house. They have to decide, what do we do? They have two alternatives. We make an agreement with Brutus and Cassius, or we kill them, okay? Mark Antony decided to make an agreement. So he met Brutus and Cassius, and they decided to confirm whatever Caesar decided before he died. What does it mean? That, for example, Caesar was divine, and he remained divine. That, for example, Caesar gave to his veterans many parts of land in the colonies, in the provinces of he just conquered in Northern Europe. That was confirmed. For example, one of the most crazy things, Caesar decided that Decimus and Brutus were going to be consuls for the next 2 years, for the next 2 upcoming years. So they were going to be the two chiefs of the state. So Caesar was so crazy at a certain point that he made these killers the most important politicians of the city. It's true that on the one hand, be a consul at the time of Caesar didn't make any sense, because in any case, Caesar made all the decision. But on the other hand, you can understand that Caesar really took them into consideration. All these decisions have been confirmed. Okay, Mark Antony say, okay, we have the assassins of Caesar have the immunity now. The most important thing is to keep the situation to peace and calm. Okay, obviously not all the followers of Caesar agreed. Okay, but the most important thing now was to make Caesar funerals. They happened 3 days after Caesar died. Thousands and thousands of people came to the funerals of Julius Caesar. They happened in the Roman Forum. There was the body of Caesar was taken to in the middle of the Forum on a funerary bed, where they burned a fire, and the body of Caesar was cremated. Okay, now I'm going to show you the exact place where Caesar was cremated, because later Octavian Augustus, the successor of Julius Caesar, built a temple dedicated to the divine Julius Caesar. So it's easy to understand. The place where Caesar was cremated became the place for the temple of Julius Caesar. This is the basement of the temple of Julius Caesar. Right behind this wall, you notice that there is an altar, or better, basically the remains of an altar. This is where Caesar was cremated. I hate these flowers and these coins because they were thrown here by Caesar that considers Caesar as a myth, as a legend. We call them fascist. Okay, Caesar was a monster. Obviously, when we evaluate as historians, when we evaluate the action of an ancient general, we can celebrate him. But when you evaluate his behaviors and his personality, we cannot ignore the fact that he was a monster. In any case, this is the base. This is the temple of Caesar as it was supposed to be. You see the altar down to the bottom, and this is the only remaining part of the temple because it has been destroyed. This is a reconstruction of the funerals of Caesar. You see those thousands of people that came, and the body of Caesar burning. The last part of the story, Caesar's body was cremated and his ashes were brought we don't know where in the city center. The tomb of Caesar had never been found. At a certain point, there was a legend that said that the obelisk standing in the middle of St. Peter's Square like a bronze sphere on the very top, okay? And people start saying that the ashes of Caesar were contained in the sphere, but the sphere has been taken down from the obelisk. Today it's in a museum. This is a picture of the sphere, and in practice it's hollow inside, it's empty. We didn't find any ash over there, so it was just a legend. It's time for somebody to read Caesar Testament. It's March 19th. It's 4 days that Caesar died, and people really wanted to know who is going to be the new Caesar, who is going to be the new leader of the world, okay? Who is going to take Caesar money, Caesar name, Caesar property, Caesar soldiers, Caesar veterans, okay? Mark Antony had to do it. Mark Antony had to read the Testament. This is a reconstruction of the rostra, so the balcony for the speeches as it was at that time. Mark Antony went to the Temple of the Vestal Virgin. He took the papyrus, and he wrote the Testament of Julius Caesar in front of thousands of people. Mark Antony was sure, I'm going to be his heir. I mean, it's me. I'm his best collaborator. I'm 40 years old. This is the peak of my life. Everybody knows me in Rome. Everybody loves me in Rome. Caesar always took me into consideration, and he helped me a lot. So he's going to choose me to be the new Caesar. And he was a little bit disappointed when he realized that he had been fired, and Octavian was chosen instead of him. Octavian was 19 when Caesar was elected. It took a while to defeat Mark Antony. At the very end, Mark Antony was killed. Oh, better, Mark Antony killed himself to save his honor after that Octavian defeated him in a few very important ancient battles. And that was when Mark Antony was in love with Cleopatra, and he was living in Alexandria, but that's another very long story, and probably I will do a virtual session about it, but that's not set in Rome, it's set in another part of the world. And finally, Octavian became the owner of the world with the name of Augustus. But remember that on the one hand, Octavian couldn't be Augustus without the money and the power that Julius Caesar left to him before he died. On the other hand, probably Julius Caesar was not going to be that great if his nephew, that became his son because he was adopted by Julius Caesar, was not going to be the greatest politician in the history of the world, because Octavian has been by far, Augustus has been by far the greatest politician in the history of the world. So I really want to thank you for your attention. Now, in a few seconds, I'm going to reopen the chat box. I hope that you love this, how can I say, view of the assassination of Julius Caesar, that you love some of the monuments you probably saw when you came to Rome. If you never saw them, next time you come, you will be able to see them. You will understand where Julius Caesar life was happening. It's a complicated story. Obviously, it was not an easy story to tell in 1 hour because many different persons, many different events happen. The chat box, is open now. So if you want to write any comment or question, I'm here for you. Thank you, Scott. Don't forget the link on the left side now, bit.ly/tipsimone. This is the link you can use to tip me. It's not clickable. You have to write it in your browser, okay? So just in case you want to help me. Thank you, Renate. Thank you. How do we get to the other tours you reference? Oh, if you go to the website, there is a page for each tour guide, virtual tour guide, so you can see all the tours I do. Did Augustus then live in Julius' villa? No. Augustus had his own house, because obviously he was living in a different house because he was not the real son of Caesar, and he was living on the Palatine Hill. And that's the reason why in few generations later, the Palatine Hill became the seat of the imperial palace, because that was where Augustus was living. This video was recorded, but unfortunately we cannot share it. I'm so sorry. This is the policy of the company. Thank you so much. To come to Canada, please. Absolutely, Nolan. I will be there. I want to be there and share a beer with you. Thank you. Formation in so little times. Yeah. There are many nice books about the assassination of Julius Caesar, as it is one of the best known events in the history of the world. It's obviously also one of the best analyzed events. You can find many books. Thank you. Oh, thank your parents. I love you, Nolan. Thank you so much. Thank you. Absolutely. We will do it again in the next month. The exact hours where the assassination occurred have been there many times. Okay, I'm going to do it in a second. The name of the square is Largo Argentina, Largo Argentina. Argentina Square. If you look for Google, if you check Google Earth or Google Maps, Argentina Square in Rome, there is only one, and that's where Julius Caesar was killed. It's a place where obviously nobody goes, because as I showed you, we don't show you that that's the place where Caesar died. Oh, thank you, Nancy. I'm so glad. Yeah, next time maybe next time you will come, I will be your guide. Thank you so much. Elizabeth, you can find it in the website. If you go to worldvirtualtours.online, there is an email where you can contact us if you will ever come to Rome, if you have friends coming. You are right, Linda. Probably divided in two parts is better, but there is a part 2 that must be done. We want to know what happened to Augustus and Mark Antony, so stay tuned. Maybe I will work on it. Thank you. The exact spot. Okay. Let me show you. It was difficult to okay. This is Largo Argentina as it is today. Look at the mouse arrow. It's here. You see that there is a stair going down from the street. This is the place, okay? So it's on the left side, right in front of the theater. This is a theater, Argentina's theater, okay? And it's right in front of it. This is where you can find the place where Julius Caesar died. Thank you. Absolutely, Linda. Thank you so much. I love all your comments. I love all your questions. I really hope to see you again. I'm going to be online again next week on December the 27th. And I'm going to do a virtual tour about, it's a sad tour. It's a very sad tour, in particular if you're Jewish people, because the tour is about Rome. The title of the tour is Before the Americans Liberated Rome. And I'm going to talk about Rome occupied by the Nazis in 1943-44. So it's a way to see a different Rome, different monuments, different story. I don't need to tell you that the story is not exactly joyful, okay? So just in case you have a strong heart and you want to know more about the World War II in Italy, you can follow me. Many Americans come to Rome because maybe their grandparents, their grandfather or their uncle or their father died here during the World War II. It's a way to know exactly what happened in the city at that time. That's exactly where the cat shelter is. Exactly, the cat shelter is right behind the wall. Okay, so the wall of the Curia Pompeii divides the Curia Pompeii from the cat shelter. So this is incredible. Okay, thank you so much. Hope to see you next time, next week online. Have a great day. Merry Christmas to all of you, and be good. Otherwise, Santa is not going to take you any gift. Have a great day. Bye.